The Compliance Perspectives podcast is sponsored by Athena, customizable compliance training, an employee hotline, and case management all in one tool. Welcome to the Compliance Perspectives podcast. I'm Adam Turteltaub from the Society of Corporate Compliance and Ethics in Healthcare Compliance Association. Joining us today from Nova Scotia is Stacy Parks. Stacy is Ethics Officer, Enterprise Operations and International Ethics at Lockheed Martin. And today we're going to be talking about her session at the 2025 SCCE Compliance and Ethics Institute. And Stacy, I gotta say, you had the most interesting title, I think, of the session because I really didn't understand it. And usually it's because of legal terms, but your session is titled Divided by a Common Language, No Cap, Here's the Tea on How Being a Mom of a Teenager Made Me a Better Communicator. I guess my first question is, can you begin by translating No Cap, Here's the Tea for an aging boomer?
Absolutely. And thank you so much for the privilege of speaking with you today. I'm not going to pretend for one moment to have known how any of those words are being used today without prior speaking to my teenager myself. No cap essentially means for real or no lying. And tea can mean anything from gossip to drama, depending on the group, the generation that you're conversing with. And, I think I can equate it back to in my day, and I'm going to date myself here. We may have referred to those types of slang phrases as the skinny or the lowdown. Might be comparative, but I am totally aging myself.
Well, for what it's worth, I've been trying to bring back groovy for a long time, and it doesn't seem to be working, so you're ahead of me. Now, how different a language is emerging in younger people, and is it entering the workforce, or is it sort of a off hours language that we're talking about?
Yeah, that's an interesting question. I think, we have to consider that today, I mean, we have 5 generations in the workforce together, 6 if you count, high school students who are doing internships and so on. So it brings a lot of opportunity and a lot of challenges. And one of the things that, I've noticed personally is that people are sharing their language preferences in the work environment. So what I mean by that is we all have bias. As human beings, we're all biased. We all think everyone wants to do things the same way that we do, obviously. So once you understand that people are going to bring their communication preferences and their bias into the work environment, then you start to kind of pick up on these little nuances. These generations today, Gen Alpha, Gen Z, Millennials even, they were digital natives. So not like myself or yourself, and I apologies for pointing that out, but we were digital immigrants. So we adopted social media and the internet at a much later time in our lives, whereas they've been kind of inundated from a very young age. So it has changed our language and their language and what they're bringing into the workplace and how they're communicating. I mean, everyone uses different types of tools, and they're wonderful tools that we all have at our fingertips today, anything from Teams to WhatsApp, gaming platforms. But those tools are really clear, succinct, and very short messaging opportunities. And it's something that these digital natives really gravitate toward. And so one of the things, and I'm going to share an example of something that kind of caught me off guard. And before the example, I'm just going to ask you, Adam, do you remember when OK became KK?
It did.
It did. It did. So, so several years ago, everyone stopped saying okay in text and they were just saying KK. And it took me a while to kind of catch on to that. But the one embarrassing thing I will share with you, it's kind of a personal story. We were in a Teams meeting, and this was, of course, at the height of COVID. So everybody was sent home. Actually, I think we were on a Skype meeting, not a Teams meeting. And everyone was kind of writing comments in the little dialogue box. And I kept seeing people writing AFK, AFK, and I had no idea what it meant. And so I was, racking my brain thinking, is there a technical term I'm not aware of? Is this a new acronym that I should know? Is it pertinent to our line of business? So I reached out to a colleague separately and they were like, no, that means away from keyboard. And I was like, when did we switch from BRB? So those types of little nuances and acronyms and just little sayings, they've been entering the workplace for quite some time. But I will share with you that there are some investigations and scenarios we're going to talk about in the session in September that will kind of walk us through how much more prevalent it's become today. Um, and I just think that whole AFK and KK and this new language, it just really makes me feel quite old. But I am thankful that I have my teenager that I can lean back on for support.
That's great that you have the internal resource. It's just probably hard to bring your team to meetings with you all the time. I wonder if Google Translate's going to add that as as a feature. Now, let me ask another question, which is related, which is how are communication style changing? I often feel these days that no one wants to communicate longer than a text, and that better have an emoji in it.
Very true. Yeah, again, so from my own personal experience, what I've noted from employees, a lot of our recent hires, the 1 0 to 5 year employees, they really resonate with shorter, succinct messaging. So anything with pictures or diagrams, anything that tells a story in one page or one photo is something that's really been resonating with them. We do track how many employees click on our links to our different communications, and really less is more when it comes to these generations, these digital natives entering our workplace. So we've adopted a lot of tools over the years to ensure that we remain agile in our communications. We've seen incredible advances and opportunities. I mean, AI is moving faster than we are able to even implement. But texting is really the preferred communication. It's the preference of these newer generations in the workplace. I'm going to share a little story about during some research while I was kind of trying to wrap my head around this topic a little bit more internationally. There was a study out of the UK that is related to telephobia. And there's actually a college, Nottingham College, who hosts coaching sessions with young students to help them cope with the fear of answering the phone. And it supports them with understanding phone etiquette, how to navigate in the professional and personal realm. So, I used to joke all the time that, it must only be my child that doesn't answer the phone ever. But now I have the realization that there's a whole generation that would absolutely prefer not to speak on the phone. Where I come from a generation where, we want that face to face interaction and we want to pick up the phone. I'm probably one of the last people that still has a landline in my neighborhood. But I prefer the phone, and that just comes back to my communication preference. So just being aware of how that's going to be changing and evolving over time, and being agile and adopting that and those new tools as needed can go a very long way in assisting your communications with your stakeholders.
We have a landline too, so maybe I'll call you just so
Oh,
we can go
fantastic.
totally old school. I just got to figure out how to hook up a rotary phone to it also. So we go all the way. So, given that compliance and ethics messages don't always lend themselves to the brief, and I'm thinking about your ethics minutes may be too long at this point, but how do we best communicate outward to the new generation entering the workforce?
Yeah, that's a great question as well. I mean, we really looked at working with various mediums to convey messages, a lot of diagrams, a lot of video-based scenarios, illustrative types of messaging, memes go a really long way. And the key is really to keeping it agile, ensuring everyone is aware of the preferred styles of their audience. And that's key. I was going to talk a little bit about our integrity minute, which is sort of, something our company adapted our communication style for training into that shorter video series. And we will show an integrity minute at our briefing in September as well. But this type of catchy sort of video based scenarios, they only run for about a minute each. And there's 3 in total. And they provide a viewer with very valuable training. So there's always like the start, the middle, and the end. And the other thing that I find really interesting about it is we make them wait for the next episode. So we're constantly getting pinged, when's the next episode coming out so we can see how this ends. So I think it's also, we value that because we come from the era where, you had to wait till the next week to see the next episode of your favorite TV show, whereas today everybody streams everything. So I think, we're teaching a little bit of patience. So we're kind of meeting the needs of, different generations, but we're also giving a very succinct, very shortened run time, so less seat time for people, and direct messaging in a way that I think resonates and impacts their training.
So up till now, we've talked about how we sort of communicate outward to them.
Mhm.
Let's talk about the other side, which is how do we listen to these generations? Are there cues we should be alert to, or is there a whole new way of listening we need to adopt?
So I think it's about being aware and paying attention to what we're seeing around us, adding new tools to your repertoire, being agile, knowing your audience well. I was really lucky recently to sit in on a presentation, and it was one of our talent acquisition personnel out of the UK was talking about, Gen Z and Alpha talent, and how do we keep them engaged, and how do we, make sure they want to be a part of our community. And they started talking about different communication styles and different codes of conduct. And they talked about a code of conduct that had been posted online from a very popular company. And it went into such minute detail about communications. And it even explained, email etiquette, not reaching out to colleagues after a certain time at night on apps like WhatsApp. So I thought that was really interesting because when you think about the fact that these generations want very succinct and clear and shortened runtime types of communications, but then they need the minute detail. And one of the things that resonated with me, and this is kind of the flip side of what we've been talking about so far, is that you've got this whole group, or we have this whole group of employees, the young 20 somethings who were going through high school or university during COVID. And so they didn't get the opportunity to work a part-time job, or hone in on those soft skills that we kind of have taken for granted because you have a part-time job at 15, 16, 17. You kind of learn the etiquette. It's kind of an unsaid culture. And so this group is not getting that firsthand. So this is their first time dealing with it in their professional work lives, which is a little bit later than what we probably would have expected or anticipated. So I think having the understanding of what communications work, the fact that this generation is still dealing with communication styles and skills and honing in on their craft, and then, making sure that they're able to learn that organically in the work environment in a very trusting and open way, but make sure we do it in a succinct style of messaging. So it all comes back again to active listening, observation, being agile, and really opening up our minds to what does the future hold and how can we proceed in a way that, maybe it's a different tool, maybe it's a different style, but again, understanding those communication preferences.
You made me think about something that, as you're talking about the part-time job and its role in helping people prepare for a career, it's something I really thought about and wondering what the implications are of the fact that, for example, in a lot of cities and a lot of areas in the U.S., there's no summer jobs for kids anymore. They just don't exist. And the percentage of kids working over the summers dropped precipitously. And what does that mean for the long term? But that's a subject for another session. But for now, I just want to say, Stacy, no cap. This was a great conversation. I really appreciate your sharing your insights here and then joining us at the 2025 Compliance and Ethics Institute. Finally, I want to thank all of you for taking the time to listen. I'm Adam Turteltaub from SCCE and HCCA. I hope we're able to expand your compliance perspective.